The fate of whistleblower Bradley Manning will be decided at any moment now. A U.S. military judge is about to pass down a sentence which could see the former Army private spend decades behind bars. Manning has been found guilty of most of the charges he faced over the leaking of government secrets, but was cleared of aiding the enemy. And RT's news editor Ivor Crotty and our correspondent Lucy Kafanov are here with me in the studio to discuss the issue. And also we're joined by Michael Kohn, who's President and General Counsel for the National Whistleblower Center, as well as reporter and columnist James Kirchick. So welcome to the program, all of you. And let me address our guests first, Michael Kohn and James Kirchick. So Michael, please tell us quickly your position on Bradley Manning, to understand what actually your grounds.
Mr. Manning was in the middle of a war. He acted out of conscience. He did not go about it the right way. However, the government overreached when it charged him with espionage. He was not involved in espionage. He was involved with the leak of classified information. I think the government has overplayed its hand, and I'll be very disturbed if the sentence is anything near what the government is seeking.
Yeah, James, and let me ask you the same position establishing question.
Yeah, well, Harvey Fierstein, who's a very famous American playwright and actor, he said that being silent in the face of evil is something that we can't do. And so, being here on a Kremlin-funded propaganda network, I'm going to wear my gay pride suspenders, and I'm going to speak out against the horrific anti-gay legislation that Vladimir Putin has signed into law, that was passed unanimously by the Russian Duma, that criminalizes homosexual propaganda, that effectively makes it illegal to talk about homosexuality in public. We've seen a spate of violent attacks on gay people
James,
in Russia.
of course, we'll discuss it later, but what about Bradley Manning first?
I'm not really interested in talking about Bradley Manning. I'm interested in talking about the horrific environment of homophobia in Russia right now, and to let the Russian gay people know that they have friends and allies in solidarity from people all over the world, and that we're not going to be silent in the face of this horrific repression that is perpetrated by your paymasters, by Vladimir Putin.
Oh,
that's what I'm here to talk about.
All right.
Yes, that's what I'm here to talk about. And I don't know, as a journalist, how you can go to sleep at night seeing what happens to journalists in Russia who are routinely harassed, tortured, in some cases killed by the Russian government.
James,
how you can call yourself a journalist and how you can go to sleep at night. I find that abominable. You should be ashamed of yourself. Everyone who works for this network should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you should cover what's happening in Russia. You should cover the horrific abuse.
And the verdict. We're waiting for the verdict.
You know, you have 24 hours a day to lie about the United States and to ignore what's happening in Russia. You have 24 hours a day to do that. I'm going to take my 2 minutes and tell people the truth.
All right, thank you very much for that.
You have that right, absolutely. I mean, are you ready to have a conversation about Bradley Manning right now with the panel that we've assembled?
RT has been Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden 24/7. I haven't seen anything on your network about the anti-gay laws that have been passed in Russia.
James,
the increasing climate of violence and hostility towards gay people.
James, on Monday we held a panel discussion. James, last Monday week we held a panel discussion on the programme about the laws. I think you'll find it very informative. You can find it on YouTube. It was hosted by Anissa Nawi. We had representatives from the LGBT community here.
Absolutely.
I think it's an issue we all take very seriously here on the channel.
Who can't say what they say on your net? They can't say they can't make these comments on Russian television. They can't write these things in Russian newspapers. They can't hold a demonstration in Russian squares.
Lucy, you have your point.
Since we are waiting at the moment for the verdict to be announced, I sort of want to go through what we're actually potentially expecting for Mr. Bradley Manning. Now, of course, he is facing 90 years potentially behind bars for leaking more than 700,000 classified Iraq and Afghanistan battlefield reports, State Department diplomatic cables that he leaked back in 2010 when he was working as an intelligence analyst. Now, we did hear from the prosecutors. They had actually asked for a 60-year prison term. And this is significantly lower than the 136 years that he was facing, but it is still it had been described as a far longer prison term than other soldiers have received in recent decades for sharing information. So this is the information that hopefully we'll be getting, the verdict that we'll be getting within this hour.
Sure, the prosecution claims Manning's revelations damaged the U.S., but how much damage was actually done, and is it deserving of a life sentence? So let's now address this question to Michael Kohn.
Well, I think that first there's a few issues. One, how was Bradley Manning treated when he was arrested? I think that should be taken into account, and I think that the prosecution should not have been allowed to go forward given the treatment he was initially subjected to. And second, we're talking about leaking classified information that perhaps a lot of it should have been out there anyway. When you have a war, you can't hide behind classification forever, or else no information gets out. And this is a very difficult issue America has not been able to deal with in a very effective manner. National security has been the third rail. If you touch it, you die in this country. Whistleblowing in all other segments has been opened up, and people have avenues to raise concerns. Bradley Manning, there was one avenue available to him. He could have gone to Congress, and that would have been protected, and he could have gone to the IG. So there were some avenues, but in reality, in the middle of a war zone, there's very little you can do. Remember the Abu Ghraib whistleblowers, they were not sentenced. In fact, they were not harassed. Their information went out the correct way through Congress. So there is one avenue available to military whistleblowers, and that's one they have to learn to use. Bradley Manning I don't think he understood that. He went to WikiLeaks, which offered no protection and had a much wider release of information than may have been necessary for Bradley Manning's purposes. So I think it's a shame that the information that should have gone to the public didn't get there in the correct way. However, I think the military and the government's prosecution and an attempt to put him in jail essentially for life is just wrong. This is release of classified information. This is not espionage. And that's what the National Whistleblower Center is the most concerned about, is charging with espionage when it's just merely leaking classified information.
Michael, you said early on, you raised an interesting point there, that in your opinion, Bradley Manning did not go about this in the right way. And you followed that up with a comment about the options that were open to him through Congress and the IG. Do you view his relationship with WikiLeaks as a mistake in that respect? Do you see him as a principled whistleblower who simply made the wrong call, choosing the wrong publisher or the wrong platform?
Absolutely. And WikiLeaks was new on the block, and no one understood exactly what it was or how it was going to fully respond to information. And that was his mistake. Had he gone through Congress, he would not be sitting in a jail cell. And that is a great shame. There would have also been a better way to vet the information to make sure the information that should be released under the First Amendment got out, but that information that maybe should have been withheld for proper classification reasons was withheld. But I think still most important, I don't believe any information was released that jeopardized American troops. And so I think that has to be taken into account. This is a leak of classified information, and I'm very upset with my government having charged him with espionage. It's overreaching. It's trying to clamp down on society, saying if you try to release information, we're going to go after you as hard as we can, instead of doing a balancing test and looking at the nation's right to freedom of speech and the First Amendment versus the government's legitimate need to protect its interests.
Just on that, if I could follow up, guys, if you don't mind, on your point about Julian Assange and about WikiLeaks, you saw them as a loose cannon in that respect. I mean, do you see Assange? Do you see WikiLeaks as an organisation that matured as a whistleblowing platform in the interim?
Yes, I do believe it's matured. However, when you're leaking classified information, you have to go, if you say you're leaking it, that's the problem. If you're following the regulations and rules that allow you to release it to Congress and to the IG, you're not leaking it. And that's the difference. And it's a serious difference as far as the criminal prosecution of the whistleblowers go. And the same goes with a lot of laws that protect whistleblowing in the United States. If you do it the right way, you can get protected. If you step out of bounds in any way, you won't be protected. In this case, when we're looking at the sentencing, we're looking at someone, all right, he stepped out of bounds clearly under the laws of the United States. However, we're talking about release of classified information, and the government's attempt to scare the entire military population into being afraid to release any information is what I'm most concerned about. There's no discussion about the right way to release it, about saying soldiers should be free to release information to Congress. It's you're going to go to jail for 60 years or life if you release information that we don't want released. That's the wrong message that should be going forward.
Sure. And there's several issues here, aren't there? Because it's not just about the leaks themselves. I mean, it's been described by critics, at least within the U.S. government at the moment, that there's a sort of a push towards over-classifying information. I mean, in the year 2011, this is long after Manning was done and in custody, the U.S. had classified 92 million documents. So that sort of makes it very difficult to decide, where that fine line should be drawn. And the other issue that we should keep in mind is, of course, Bradley Manning, at least according to his own statements, he did try to approach the New York Times, the Washington Post with the leaks initially before going to WikiLeaks. He was rejected, and so he felt at that time that WikiLeaks was his only option. So definitely several issues to consider here, overclassification being one of them. And then, of course, it's not just the military guys that we're going after here. There's also been a push to essentially make it more difficult for journalists to publish this
government
kind of
should.
Yeah,
and also just talking about Bradley Manning himself, obviously he leaked not only video of innocent people being killed by U.S. military, but also he leaked thousands of diplomatic cables. Do you think he went too far? What do you think? Talking about
the diplomatic cables were quite salacious. I think they were gobbled up by the media. I think in that diplomats who journalists have a notoriously squeaky relationship with were suddenly the catchphrases and the terms they used, the offhand manner in which they wrote sometimes, and the way they referred to some key actors, key global actors, in a not entirely respectful way, I think was gobbled up by the media, and people quite liked that. I'm not necessarily sure what damage they might have done or their journalistic value other than that salacious element. I'm not sure where you stand on it, Michael, for example. Do you think that the diplomatic cable follow-up after the collateral murder video was perhaps counterproductive as far as WikiLeaks was concerned, or indeed Manning?
Yeah, and also, Lucy, don't you think the government has the right to protect its...
It was.
Excuse me, was it Michael there? Okay, Michael, jump in, sorry.
Yeah, I think it was Yeah, I believe it was counterproductive. It took the issue off of the war and turned it into a more international, how you say bad things about people. And I'm certain if you read the diplomatic cables from the other countries, you got the same type of language going back and forth. That's what happens when people talk behind closed doors. That a glimpse of it came to light is not a bad thing. People understand how the systems work a little better than they used to. So I don't think it's a horrible thing. And we're talking about diplomats and individuals who have faced much harder criticism and words from their own people and from around the world. So yes, it was a TV, soundbite that detracted from the real issue, which was the continuation of the war and what was happening in Iraq.
And if I can jump in, I'm just curious whether you think what you think the difference is between, for example, what Bradley Manning leaked and what Daniel Ellsberg leaked, and how the leaks have evolved essentially over the decades.
Well, Daniel Ellsberg is the first real leaker of classified information in the United States, and with him, he would have faced the same type of prison sentences that we're looking at now. And the only difference is that in the White House, the president at the time, Nixon, had created a plumbers unit who went in and was engaged in gross criminal misconduct. One of the criminal misconducts it did was to break into Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office and take this file so they could figure out how to paint Daniel Ellsberg in a horrible light to the media. This only came to light because of the Watergate tapes that were released. And when that happened, the prosecution, the judge threw out the prosecution for misconduct on the part of the government. So the issue of what type of sentence and what type of First Amendment rights the public should have was never crossed. And we're really only crossing that bridge now. And instead of having a real vigorous debate on the part of the U.S. government, what you have is the government and the administration jumping up and down and seeing how long and how hard they can throw someone in jail forever. That's what is causing the National Whistleblower Center the biggest amount of concern. Is the dialogue is not on how was the information overclassified. What rights do the American people have to get this type of information? How do we go about and re-look at the laws? Why are we subjecting Bradley Manning to 1917 Espionage Act laws, which were overbroad and overreaching back then? And why haven't we come into the 21st century when it comes to national security whistleblowing? That's the debate that hopefully this trial can spur in the United States.
All right, Michael Kohn, who's President and General Counsel for the National Whistleblower Center. And just to remind you, the fate of whistleblower Bradley Manning will be decided any moment. We're waiting for the verdict. And of course, we'll be back with the same panel of guests after a very short break. Do stay with us.